Hello, everybody. My name is Roula Nezi. So I'm based at the University of Surrey, kind of around London. I'm here as a senior lecturer in political science, and my research mainly focuses in the area of like voting behavior, survey analysis. I'm trying, and recently I got like some grant, and I'm trying to understand why it is the case that, especially in Europe and in the States today, people were becoming more and more polarized, especially what we call kind of affectively polarized. So in a sense, why we today we live in a very divisive societies. But on top of that, my work is very much focused on the use of quantitative methods. And I've been teaching quantitative methods at different levels, from like undergrads to postgrads to PhDs for a few years now, and obviously in the UK, but also in countries like Germany, and in specific kind of summer schools and workshops organized from associations like, for example, the ECPR, the European Consortium for Political Research. I've been doing that, like teaching different kind of methods, starting from descriptive statistics and regression analysis to really kind of more advanced stuff. For example, 8-period cohort models, which is one of the examples I'm going to show you actually today. So in recent years, I have started been focusing, or the last couple of like 2 years, on how like new developments in technology, and especially like the use of AI, can help us as researchers to apply quantitative methods, and to a certain extent also how it can help us, let's say, speed up our kind of writing process and our analysis. So, and that is in general my approach to the use of AI. So I think that one of the ways to see it is not necessarily by simply relying on AI to do the research for us, but once we know exactly what we want to do, how we can use the AI to help us kind of speed up the process and move much faster from like an idea to kind of a testable idea. So to a certain extent, a little bit more like, how can we use the AI as our kind of personal research assistant to a certain extent? I mean, it can't be as good, as a PhD researcher, for example, to a sense like it cannot really generate, to a certain extent, I would say, like new ideas, but it can definitely help you become a little bit kind of produce results more faster. So in a way, I would say that AI today can help us a little bit with the DAO part of coding, especially when it comes to quantitative methods, and give us more space to think about new theories and to think how we can better explain and the interpretation of our results. Now, having said that, and before I start with my presentation, I would like to ask you whether you have used thus far kind of any of those AI models, either kind of ChatGPT or Claude, for example, or Gemini, for your own research. If you can just raise your hand if it's possible here, or if you can just drop a quick like message, just for me to have a little bit of an idea. So if you have used any kind of AI model, either OpenAI or any other one, for your own research, and if it's possible, just let us know. Is it for quantitative stuff? Is it for qualitative? Could be even to help you sometimes, even with writing, for example, restructuring a sentence. And I will go into ethics of it, of the use of AI, at the very end of this presentation. If you can just drop us a quick message. Could be either be a simple yes or no. So we just have an I have not, a no. Anything from the others? Okay, yeah. ChatGPT for like scripts. It's very good. Just waiting for another to people who are responding? Yeah. So in general, with like these new kind of AI LLM models, what we have is that, you know, there are more and more of them. So we kind of started, I would say, with the OpenAI, ChatGPT, and but now you have a lot of very different ones. Okay, so you have Claude, you have ChatGPT, you have Gemini, and I'm pretty sure there are many more out there. So different one of those, they come kind of Python coding blogs, very good. So um, so different one of them they come kind of with a kind of its own reputation, I would say. So for example, now Claude is considered more closer to people who would like to do anything with data analysis. I would say Python is a very good example around that. And then ChatGPT is now kind of considered that as it is a little bit more generic. Okay, so not necessarily very good when it comes to data analysis and data coding. And then kind of Gemini is considered like a new potential kind of rising star. Myself, I started with ChatGPT, so I've used it for a lot of different things, like from, you know, kind of general use of AI models, and then I've used it quite a lot for coding as well. Recently, I switched to Claude, which I have to say I have found a little bit or kind of better for things that I would like to do. And so I need to say that, I mean, for this session as well, and the way I use the AI for my own analysis, what I do is I'm using RStudio, which is not far from Python, but let's put it like a bit bluntly, is not as advanced to a certain extent as Python. So people who are working more into data science, they might use typically Python. In social sciences, we use R, and especially kind of RStudio. So let's say you are in a position where you need to write a new paper, you need to develop something for your PhD, and you need to use, let's say, some quantitative method. So you got some feedback that says that you need to use some quantitative kind of analysis to test something additional in your for your PhD thesis, for example, let's say to analyze some survey data. So I know that especially among us who are like might not be very familiar with a specific method, that kind of seem quite sometimes quite difficult. But I think this is where the usefulness of AI will come, because the AI can actually, I feel like, help you in addition to textbooks, learn the method, and then it can also help you quite a lot to write the code that you need in order to analyze the data. And why this session? I think you might, if you think about it, you might potentially agree with me that we started about, I would say, a year and a half, 2 years ago, starting about AI, and most people be quite reserved, especially a lot of people in academia be quite reserved with the use of AI. And I'm going to touch upon this at the very end of my presentation, where I would like to talk to you a little bit about the ethics, but something very specific around it. So how and when, how and what you should report to academic journals, peer review academic journals, if you have used AI, and what are the main policies around it. So how basically we need to be transparent about it. So why this session? As I said, like if you have asked yourself, we see yourselves where we were about 2 years ago, I would say the most, people in academia have been quite reserved about the use of AI when it will come to do, has to do with, use it in order to produce kind of research. And to a certain extent, I think the approach that all universities and all institutions have taken was to completely ban the use of AI. And that was, the case, I would say, also in my institution. We started by saying we do not allow the use of AI at all. So with a suspicion that somebody had used AI, immediately they will go to a panel 2 years later, though, we're in a position where we have integrated the use of AI into our modules. We have assignments kind of that students need to develop explicitly with the use of AI. And now is not only that, as is, many institutions, especially across the UK, they have developed, they're all partnerships with Claude or with OpenAI. So you have a more kind of protected AI environment that as a researcher and as a student you can use. And that is kind of a huge shift. So we also have, for example, today, many institutions, as you do, kind of right now, specific training sessions on how we can use the AI, especially when it comes to methods, so we can be a little bit, faster, or what sometimes they might, report now a bit more productive. And I would say to a certain extent that is true. We can be, I would say, not necessarily more productive, but definitely faster. And why is that? I mean, if you have used the way you would try to use AI, either if it comes like to qualitative methods or especially to quantitative methods that involved often a lot of like coding, and that means a lot of errors. Typically when it comes to coding, things will become much faster. Okay, what I mean by that is that, in the past, let's say that you had to use SPSS or Stata or Studio or Python, and if you had an error, let's say in your code, typically it would take you a minimum, I would say, from my personal experience, about half an hour or so to try and identify the mistake, look online, search for it on Google, and imagine that would have been just one error, okay? And until you find a position, or you had a specific idea about how a graph you want it to look like, and then, you would just go around. If you didn't know the code by heart, which most people don't, you have to go online again, look to specific pages, look at books. So that could even take one working day in total. So today, though, with AI, things are going like really fast. So if you have a mistake in your code, the easiest thing to do is basically to upload everything into, your script file to your AI, and then AI will immediately find the mistake. Okay, so it really speed up that more kind of, I would even dare to say, like, difficult, boring part of like finding the code, or as we sometimes in technical terms we call like debugging the code. So you can have easily like a clean kind of code. Now, another very important, I think, development when it comes to AI, it has become kind of better and better. You might have, and I'm pretty sure you know that, like a couple of years ago, or even a few months ago, I would even dare to say, and there are differences on that, what I wanted to mention among modules, but there has been a lot of what we call hallucinations that were generated with the use of AI. To a certain extent, that this is not true anymore. There might be some hallucinations, especially when it comes to references, or sometimes if you, for example, post your results in like an AI model, you will see might hallucinate some numbers, so you might have to be a little bit careful. But those hallucinations now are down to almost like a zero, so they're more and more rare. In the past, we had to be really kind of cautious about it. But I think the main thing is that now AI has really accelerated things, and is really like could potentially act as a very good kind of research assistant, especially when it comes to quantitative methods. And there is a reason for that, which is that it's programmed to a certain way. So it's using like statistics, it's using LLM models to generate it outcome. So especially when it comes to coding, like Python, for example, or RStudio is really good. But it's also really good at translating code from one like language, like software, to the other. So, but in general, the AI, and that's, I think, that is the starting point. I used to call that garbage in, garbage out. So AI is really good when we're giving very specific prompt, as we call it. So when the task is very clear, is kind of very focused. So when we really know what we want to do. So anything that is a little bit more generic, typically will also create a not very good output. So, but if we really know what we want AI to do for us, or let's say that our research assistant wants to do it for us, then AI will be pretty good. It's interesting because I mean sometimes it's better if you kind of train a little bit your models to a certain extent. So say what is your task, what is the main output, what is the audience, for example, how you want your outputs to look like, few things about your data, then the output will become a little bit more also kind of sophisticated. What is also important is that you, as a general advice, don't let the AI have the lead. You should always be the main researcher, and then the AI should be acting as the assistant. So you should be owing, the outcome to a certain extent. So the theory, right? The data, potentially what you're trying to find, okay? But the AI is there to help you. As I said, I'm now using Claude. And for people who might have never used this one, I think there are options of using like the free version of all kind of different AI models, but they're also paid versions. And I think they're more or less all of them the same. As I've said, I've tried ChatGPT and I have tried Claude. Both of them are about, I would say, £20 monthly. And in many institutions, there is also like the option to use their, own dedicated within the institution kind of AI model. So may I ask if anyone has like any more kind of generic questions about the different models, about AI in general, something that you maybe want to know about the different models, the subscriptions. If there is anything, just let me know into the chat. So Mimi, may I have the next slide, please, if possible?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So what I wanted to do for this example is I'm gonna show you kind of some cases, and then I'll be talking for about, I would say, an hour, and then maybe we can try and replicate what I'm saying, or try to replicate some of your ideas, so you will be kind of working a little bit on your own during the second kind of hour. So using an example here that very much comes, or is kind of related with my own research on how I've been using AI. So we're going to be working on the example of the gender equality paradox. So as you may know, I mean, today there is a lot of discussion about the emergence of, let's say to a certain extent, the issue of gender equality, and also to the fact that we see that like many parties today, but also many individuals and everything, tend to be like forming like different opinions on kind of gender equality. And no matter how you measure it, gender equality, if you're looking at, let's say, for example, individual level attitudes, or if you're using like different kind of proxies of gender equality, like, for example, gender gaps, when it comes to STEMs, we see a very similar trend, which is the fact is a paradox, basically, that basically in more egalitarian societies, okay, what they have observed is that even though it seems to have succeeded in terms of like gender equality, men being equal to women, and in many cases, even when women tend to, or girls in that case, tend to perform far better than men in subject in education related to STEM, like maths. In general, what is happening is that in some of those countries, at the end, less women tend to choose STEM as their subject of study. Okay, so the paradox basically it is like, even though it seems that women are performing much better in those, let's say, modules and courses, less women tend to choose to study that subject. And that phenomenon we see especially in countries that are scoring quite high when it comes to egalitarianism and gender equality. So according to the theory, you have believed that quite the opposite will be happening, right? That the more egalitarian, the more equal when it comes to gender, the society is, the same number of men and women who have chosen to study like the subject. But we observe quite the opposite. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you different examples of how we can start from the very, very beginning of trying to describe, okay, with the use of data, the attitudes and the beliefs, and then we're gonna go all the way up to running specific models, okay, that can test our hypotheses. So we're going to start with the classic descriptions. We're going to see specific outputs that the AI can give you. We can look at the specific code. We look at the visualizations. I can give you some tips there. And then finally, how we can test our hypotheses. I have used a very specific kind of slightly more advanced model in quantitative methods, and then how you can use AI to translate basically the output into actual file that you can use in your Word, let's say, document, depending on what you're using to write. Great. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, excellent. So basically what we're going to do, so the first one will be prompting, because I think that is the most important one. So how I will start with the next slide, if that is possible, please, on how to actually prompt the AI as it is a kind of a junior research assistant for you. Great. So if at any point you would like me to pause and discuss a little bit about something, please do let me know. Okay. I think it's nice also because you know, if you just pause me and tell me if there is anything that you want me to explain a little bit more or give you more additional kind of examples, that would be great. So as I said, and especially if you have like a paid version of the AI, is very, very useful if you can brief the model a little bit, give some context about what is it exactly that you want to do. So what is the exact question that you're trying? What is your research question that you try to provide an answer to? What is it that you have already decided that you want to do, right? So for example, my research question is, I'm trying to understand, let's say, why younger men today, let's say, more and more against gender equality, and I want to start by describing my data. So one of the things, and why I'm saying that, the reason is because the AI doesn't, I mean, it's not as potentially clever as we might think. So you have to give like very clear instructions. To an extent, imagine it this way. Let's say that you had the money to hire a first year undergraduate student, okay? So you need to inform them a little bit about the theory, about what is exactly that you want to do. So treat the AI as a very kind of junior, I would say, research assistant. Tell what is your research question. Tell what is your hypothesis. You can even say about a few things about like existing theories related to your research question and to your topics. So this way you kind of prompt the AI, okay? But then you can also say what is the exact data set that you want to use, okay? So it's getting more and more kind of trained now, the AI. They kind of know all different kind of data sets that are available, mainly because other people have used it and also because this is like information that is available online. One of the things that you have to be a little bit careful about is that I would strongly advise if to inform the AI about the names of the different variables. So to basically what I mean is like give the code book. Because the AI, for example, knows what is the European Social Survey, but might make a lot of mistakes when it comes to the specific variables that are included in the European Social Survey. But you can make sure that is not going to be the case if you share the code book, for example. Typically, those are available online, or even if you don't want, so it's information that even the AI can find, okay, without any restrictions. I will not advise you to do so if it is a data that is generated by you. Okay, so you might not want to share to the AI your own data as such. But here, in any case, I'm not talking about uploading the whole data set, which I'm going to talk about as well. But what you can do is that you can just tell the AI about the names of your variables, what those variables are measuring, what the different values actually represent. So it can help you a bit with the production of a code, of a correct code. Now, once you've done that, and once you have given context, just the final thing about the give context. I mean, it's not bad. Sometimes, you can just write something like a whole paragraph about it. So don't be afraid to write things to inform the AI about it, especially if you're using the paid version. The paid version with Claude, but also with ChatGPT. I'm not so sure about Gemini and the others because I haven't used them. They will typically allow you to create, as they call them, projects. And in those projects, you can import as much information you want and will always be there. So imagine it this way, is a little bit like a folder, and you create like kind of your project, you inform about what is it that you will be working on, like the theory, the data, etc. And then you can have like multiple different chats, okay, about it. So once you've done that, then the next step basically will be to specify what exactly is it that you want. And in this case, what exactly is it that you want about like the use of quantitative methods. And the more specific you are, the better it is. Okay, so you can say that, for example, that you want the code in order to produce kind of some results, that you want the code in order to present a graph. Okay. The other thing is that sometimes like a common mistake that we're making is that we're kind of overloading the model and the AI, basically, in a sense, like especially if we're using the free version, and we do know that we'll have a specific number of prompts, and after that it will eventually kind of block us, or it will downgrade this to last features. There we tend to kind of overload the prompt with a lot of information, and you might see that quite often that creates a lot of confusion. So my advice to you is like narrow the scope. Every time, if you want, for example, to recode different values, every time try to keep it to one variable, two variables max at a time, especially if those variables have like different levels of measurement, just to revive a little bit your memory. What I mean with that is, especially if you have, let's say, one variable is a continuous variable, like is an index from 1 to 10, and the other variable, let's say, is a leakage scale variable that is ranging from 1 to 5 and is agree, disagree. So the more information basically you combine into one prompt, the more complex and difficult things will become, and the more confusion it will cause to the AI model. It is also, I think, a good strategy when you treat your AI as a junior research assistant to ask to give you 2 or 3 different kind of approaches. So if you say something like, I want to have a graph showing like differences in means among men and women, and what are their beliefs on like gender equality, it would be much better if you ask, instead of you say something like, give me one graph, say something like, give me two graphs, one let's say with bars, another one with lines, etc., that I can visualize like the gender gap on attitudes towards gender equality, for example. The other thing is that is also, I would say, quite important, especially when it comes to slightly more advanced models. I'm not so sure about the kind of models you're using, but let's say if you're using like different types of kind of regression analysis, and there are certain elements of it that you're not so sure about, it's quite important to ask the AI to kind of flag the assumptions that it's making about the model. So what I'm trying to say here is that I have seen it happening a lot, especially with my PhD students, that and when they try to apply a new method, the AI, and especially ChatGPT, but all of them to a certain extent, they have this tendency to derail you from what you're trying to do to something completely different. What I mean by that, it means they always ask, do you want me to do this? And do you want to do that now? And do you want to try the other way? And then an hour later, you might end up with something which is completely different, and you have no idea what this is about. But it kind of looks quite often pretty cool, to be honest. So what is important is keep on top of those things, and especially when it comes to quantitative methods, try to always, understand what the AI is doing, what that model is actually doing, what are the assumptions of the statistics that the AI is taking. Okay, so for example, if you have a continuous variable, make sure that the AI is telling you basically how to run a linear regression model and not a logistic regression model, which is for dummy variables, so variables binary that are like 1 and 0. Okay, may I have the next slide, please? Excellent. So I would like to start, and before we go to a little bit more specific stuff, with examples of, I named them here bad and good kind of prompts, but as I said, the more specific you are, the better it is. So if you, for example, let's say you're using the European Social Survey, and you start by saying, can you just help me look at gender attitudes in the European Social Survey and do some analysis for me, you don't know the outcome. Okay, you don't know with what you might end up with. And that could be quite dangerous, especially when it comes to academic research. So you don't really know which variables the model will select. You don't really know what the AI thinks actually is a gender attitude. Okay, but we as researchers, we do know that. Okay, so we've done our homework. We know, we have provided that definition of like a gender attitude. We know that, I mean, for example, if that's what we want to study, we should be looking about what people, men and women, think about the position of women in society, about whether women should be allowed to find a job, whether women are making good politicians, whether women should have equal rights in education, just to give you some examples coming from those public opinion surveys like the European Social Survey and also the World Value Survey or the European Value Survey. Now, so the more vague, okay, your prompt is, the more also equally vague will be and not, I would say, very trustworthy, the outcome. But if you become very specific, so for example, if you say like, by using the European Social Survey, and here I'm very specific, maybe you don't have to be that specific, but this is just a bit of an exaggeration to give you kind of an idea. But if you say, for example, by using the European Social Survey, and you even specify the round, so it knows exactly what information that it needs to use, and give me back like R code, okay, to recode those specific variables, that are ranging like from 1 to 5, and then you specify what 1 means and what 5 means, okay, then produce some means, then the AI will give you a very kind of specific output. Okay, so it works in this case because it knows exactly the data set that it needs to go and find information for. It knows exactly the variables and the values. So it knows also what each one of those values mean. So potentially it would know whether it has to, as we call, to reverse, okay, the values. So to make sure, for example, that all values, the number 5 in all values will mean anti-gender attitudes, etc. So it will give you the code to do that for all variables. It will know that it will have to calculate means, and also, as you will see at the end, it will know that it will also have to give you the code to remove from your data set what we sometimes call the missing code. These are like values like, I don't know, I don't want to give an answer, typically represented by numbers like 78, 88, 99, etc. So I think the first and most important thing is to give very, very good and very specific prompts to the AI. So once you've done that, you've done most of the work that you actually need. Can I have the next slide, please? Great. So the AI, what it can do, basically, as I said today, and I will recommend that, it can do the analysis, I mean, for you. Okay. It can handle, especially the paid versions. They can handle huge data, but I don't think that is the best approach. A, because you might not always be allowed to share the data. Number 2 is because you do not really know what is happening, behind the scenes, basically. So the best option you might have is to ask AI always to generate the code for you. So you can go back into your program and you can run the code, and you make sure that you understand the code, okay? Because that is also quite important. Having said that, today we also have the option to use the AI through our software. You might have seen that in the qualitative methods. For example, if you're using NVivo, it allows you to use AI directly through the program, but at the same time, there are ways where you can connect, let's say, Python or even RStudio with a specific kind of AI, like Claude, for example, and then use the AI to check your code or to help you with the code while you're actually using the RStudio. Okay, so you don't even really need to use the AI to produce the code. They can do that, through your kind of software. Right. So, and I think that one of the main advantages that AI has, not advantages, but I mean, one of the area where AI really speed up quite recently is exactly when it comes to cleaning and provide you the code in cleaning or merging like your data. So what I mean by merging, I give you an example from my own research. It was the case that sometimes, actually, do we have anyone here who is maybe working on parties and public opinion? If you do so, just raise your hand. If not, I will just try to explain a little bit more the different, as they call, like data sets that I have been using. But part of the work that I've been doing recently demanded from me basically to merge, so to combine two data sets. The one data set was a standard public opinion data set asking for individual attitudes. Actually, it had to do with voting and which parties people voted for at the national and at the European elections. And then I had another data set, which is called the Chapel Hill Expert Survey. And what that data set is doing is providing a lot of information about the position of the party on different issues, ranging from like attitudes, ranging from the position of the party on issues like immigration, the economy, taxation, the war in Ukraine, and all the way to like Galdan authoritarian or non-authoritarian kind of dimensions or gender equality. So my job was to try and merge, bring together those two files so that I know the position of each party that voters voted for, either at the national or the European elections, and their position on kind of different issues. That meant that I had to identify the position on different issues, actually 5 different issues of about 400 and something parties in the EU. And that was a lot of work. I have tried to give you an idea about the amount of the work that needs, is that I did that as a PhD student, and that have taken me about 3 months of like full-time work on doing it, because I had, parties are changing their names as well. Parties disappear. And so it was really a lot of work. I did it with the use of, I asked AI to do it, to help me with that process, try to identify, match, like link the parties in both data sets. That was about 6 months ago, and it was a total disaster. AI couldn't do it at all. There was a lot of mistakes. It was a total chaos, to a point that it felt like I have really wasted my time. I gave it another chance about a month ago, and it has been fantastic. Okay, so that saved about 3 months of work. Obviously, I knew exactly what I had to do, and I gave very specific orders to the AI, really kind of orders: do this, do that, check for this, check for the other things. But it really kind of accelerated the, my research. And I think that is the part that now AI is it's becoming really good at. And if you're working, with different data sets, you feel me about that, or if you ever had to have, needed to match kind of different data sets. So can I have the next slide, please? Right, so let's see. So this is, if we move on to descriptive statistics, that is typically the first thing that you do when it comes to the use of, when it comes to quantitative methods. So you want kind of to have an overview of your data. And what I have here is exactly an outcome that, or a table that you can immediately get with AI, and especially with Claude. Okay, so if you just ask to give you, as we did in the prompt that I explained at the very beginning, you can ask it to give you the weighted means by country. Let's say that you have many countries in your survey, and by gender. The AI now would just give you a table that it looks very much like that. Okay, so you have all the different countries. You have like gender, women, male, female, also the gender gap, and the number of cases that are included. So in a way, you kind of like publication already. Now, but what is, can I have the next slide, please? What is even better is that basically the AI can also now today, if you ask it, give you some very kind of interesting graphs. Okay, so a prompt that you can use to have that is to ask the AI basically to draft a graph that means for you by countries, or the, by average levels of support for like men and women, give specific instructions about like the colors that you want the graph to have, if you want to have different colors for men and women, and etc. And what is quite important is what I have at the very end, I would say, which is it can help you export the code for you. And can I have the next slide? Yes. So basically that's an example of what AI will give you. Okay, it will give you something which is exactly like that. Typically it will annotate it, so it will just tell you what each row is kind of doing. You can even ask the AI to give you, to explain it to you like line by line, but it will give you all the libraries that you need, and all the code that you need. And typically, if we have provided very specific instructions, it will be very, very good at giving you the best code possible, that all you will have to do is like copy paste it into like RStudio and you will get the draft. So this specific code that I have here can create the graph that you saw just earlier with the lines. Okay. So what I did is like is using many different kind of packages here, is waiting, is calculating the means, is generating the gender gap. You can see that in the second around here, like in the second, that is like the second block starting with mutate. That means that it's generating like the new variables. What I will always advise you to do is like to be, to try to familiarize yourself quite a lot with the code. So you can even ask AI to give you some training on the code, or you can even ask AI to basically give you a code that you feel confident with, and you understand, because it is important, I think, always for us to have, to really know what we are doing. Okay, to own like our data and our research as well. So I know that it's been about an hour. So should I ask if you want us to have a quick break and then we resume with the rest? Or Mimi, can I ask, how would you like us to proceed?
Whichever you prefer. If everybody wants a break, we can break for like 5-10 minutes. If not,
Okay, yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, maybe we can have like a 5 minutes break and we resume. That would be about like five, or 4 or 5 past one.
okay. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, shall we continue?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, great. So, can I ask, kind of people, if I can have some like volunteers and tell me a little bit, potentially maybe about kind of your own kind of research and what kind of data maybe even you like to analyze. So my main idea here is like if I would like you to potentially to if you can write down and Sarah, we can get some feedback on potential prompts for the AI, so we can just familiarize ourselves with that. So anyone who is like would like to share with us about potential use of quantitative methods AI, what kind of question, for example, you would like to answer, what kind of analysis you might have in mind to do, how would you ask that to the AI? Can I have a volunteer? So has anyone maybe like used any kind of survey before? Or maybe are you all maybe if you can just give me a bit of a kind of feedback if you're all just the only using, I know someone who said that they're using like a Python, but are you all just now using qualitative methods for your work? Yeah.
Um, so in the past, I've done data transformation and all those kind of things using AI. I've also used Python scripts.
Okay.
And but one recent one, which I'm beginning to see, is that these models seem to differ from one another, or in terms of capabilities, in
Absolutely.
the sense that they some tend to forget
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Some will give you links to that are dot that don't exist.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Um, and so take, for example, the one of the things which I have been playing around with is imagine I'm working with two versions of a document or more than one. Let me just say more than one version of a document. So imagine I put a data set in there and the data set has a count of male and female
Yeah.
over of within a primary school over a period. And my half class, let's imagine I did my first version, had the mean
Yeah.
of all the students
Yeah.
in, I put a first version of that with all of that, with all the count and the year and all that. And then I put another version in a recent version, and I want to start commenting on my recent version. One
Yeah.
of the things I've seen is that, and I found this in Gemini, it starts commenting on my older data set
Yeah.
and forgets that I have just loaded a new data set into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my question is, how do you force it to um, work with your current data set or your current version of what you're talking about? What I've done is I talk to it as like an individual.
Yeah.
And I will say things like, where has it gotten the feed that it's using to come up with these assertions and things like that?
Yeah.
And just probe and challenge it. And you say, oh, sorry, you caught me up on that.
Yeah.
So I see gaps in some of the things that these these things come up with? And I'm wondering, is there a way around that?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and it was something that that was an issue I had as well, because sometimes I would see, especially, either in situations like the one you describe, you upload a new version of the same data set with more information, or
Yes.
I can give you another example when you have multiple projects, okay?
Mm,
And let's say
mm,
in one project you're working with one data set, and quite often, I mean, our work is not that different. I mean, I'm working with like mainly voting, but might be different approaches to that or attitudes. So they're quite my project is not exactly similar, but they're using more or less the same concepts. And then what I've realized is that sometimes I started kind of mixing them up.
yes.
And so one of the things that I did is when I realized that this is happening, I went and I become kind of very explicit, and that work actually. I've given kind of prompt or commands like forget the previous data set or forget what we just discussed or start from the very beginning.
Mm,
The other thing is that I can't tell you if there are differences between dictating, like talking to it, and typing. It seems that some of my colleagues in AI kind of sessions, they notice that there are differences, meaning that they sometimes typing is doing a better job than dictating. But typically, the other thing that I will do is that I will create projects, and I will make sure that either I delete the previous files if I have uploaded files, or I will explicitly say to the AI, forget, the file I uploaded, or I might ask to perform a simple task like read this. From now on, we will be using this data set, do a thorough
mm,
review, and tell me what is included in this data set. Or quite often, I might be like, tell me what is different in
mm,
this data set compared to the previous one. So basically, to kind of prompt to the fact that now I'm giving you something new, and I want us to start working with that kind of new data set. I've learned by doing it that sometimes the best thing is to give very explicit, I would say, orders or prompt asking to perform a task to learn something. So like go through the data set, tell me what is included in the data set, tell me how many variables are there. Okay, so you start kind of learning the data that you want to work with.
So imagine like I'm making a presentation um to perhaps a team of um to a team, and in that presentation
Mm-hmm.
it is I have data, maybe climate data, and I want to imagine the questions that they will be asking
Okay.
during the presentation. So I load my presentation in there, and I'm saying that um, as uh, as the chief CFO of Lever Brothers,
Yeah.
um, what kind of questions would you, or ask the questions, you review these and come up with the kind of gaps of questions as CFO of Lever Brothers.
Okay.
And I use that at times so that I can see gap within my presentation or my paper.
Yeah.
How is that a very refined way of asking? And is that best under a subscribed, um, a paid subscription or the free subscription? And which tools would you think do this best?
So I think that in general, the difference between the free and the paid is that the paid will use more advanced and recent modules. It's not only like how many prompts you will have, okay, is also the fact that it will use more advanced models.
Mm.
So they restrict the free version, not only in the number of prompts, but also into the model that you can use. Okay.
Oh.
Now, as I said, I've tend to find Claude quite good when it
Okay.
comes to coding and these things. But I think it might have to do with the fact that more and more academics are now using Claude, so it's better trained. From that, also, I think it's quite good because it makes you by default to think. So when you ask a question, it will typically, make you think a little bit, ask you some questions back, which I think that is quite good as well. And then I know that a lot of people are using Gemini, but I don't have a lot of experience with Gemini. I mean, I was using ChatGPT and I moved to Claude, especially because of the coding recently. So I found it a bit more straightforward.
And then my last question is on this one where you have more than one model running. So you have tools like Perplexity, which has maybe about 3 or 4 models it's running on. And then sometimes when you ask questions, especially intellectual questions, they might be able to even prompt into or provide academic peer-reviewed journals
Okay.
to
Yeah.
some of the things that you are asking it about. What are your thoughts on those kind of tools?
Like using it for, so can you repeat a little bit the question if you can?
So these are tools like Perplexity. It's called
Yeah.
perplexity.ai.
Yeah.
And one of the things it's got is in the back end, instead of it running, it has about 3 or 4 models that is running on, and it can be free or
Okay.
subscribed to. So it's when it's trying to look out for information, it scans all the models it's got. And it's on the back of that it gives you its response. So my question is, what are your thoughts to
Yeah. But we're talking again about paid versions, right?
yeah, it can be paid as well.
Yeah. So I think it really depends on your use of the AI. I mean, it happened like this morning accidentally. I used that one, Perplexity,
Mm.
and it asked for a subscription. But I do always think it really depends on what you want to do. But I have seen that the paid versions are far better,
Okay.
to be honest. And that is only because of the models that you can use. So you have like access to faster and better models. So you immediately get access to the latest version. Basically, that is the main difference that you have there, which is not the case with the free ones.
Okay.
Basically, yeah, that is the main, and some other additional features like research, for example. That's all. Okay, so I think we have one more question from Ryan, but yeah, very interesting stuff. I mean, yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask. I think what the other chap was saying was, if you're asking if you're using the AI to review academic research that's already out there,
Okay.
is it reasonable? Is it allowed? I think because that was a question I had as well. Is if you've got a hypothetical statement that you need verification or you need more information, is it okay to use Perplexity in this case to go and do the research and bring you back some of that information so that it either validates or invalidates what you're trying to say?
Yeah, okay, I got you, and I understand what you mean now. Okay, that is good point and a fair point. To be honest, I mean, Ryan, I would never trust it for anything. I don't know. So I will tell you what I'm gonna say typically to my own PhD students. Okay. In my case, after working on a specific field, after, I don't know, like now it's been about 10 years, maybe might be even more than that. I kind of know the bibliography. Okay. So I can easily verify what the AI has given me, because sometimes what I have seen is that they use specific resources in a way that will, do I say, like, please you? Okay, so they might take, for example, a paper. Okay, first of all, they can only read the abstracts, most of them. So they will take something from the abstract and they might include it into their output in a way that is convincing, but there's going to be a lot of concept stretching. So if you actually read the paper, it might say something which is slightly different, if not completely different. And sometimes it's very difficult to spot that, especially when it comes to kind of more recent developments, or especially if your topic is not necessarily, you know, among kind of the most mainstream, like what is, just to give you an example of that. Okay, so let's say that you know quite a lot about the impact of the economy on how people tend to vote, okay? But then if you ask a question about what is the impact, let's say, of gender inequality on attitudes towards gender inequality on voting behavior, and you ask AI to give you kind of an output, might have I have seen a lot of mistakes in there. So my advice is that if it is on kind of a group, or if it is on a topic that you're very familiar with and you feel kind of confident that you can immediately quote those errors, might be a good starting point. Otherwise, my suggestion would be to be very, very cautious about it.
Yeah, I mean, my research is about therapists working online during COVID, and so it was a fairly new concept at the time. And trying to find any research on this when I'd initially started my thesis, because there wasn't anything because of the phenomenon of COVID. And just trying to, now a few years later, as I'm reworking my thesis, I'm having to try and find other research that sort of maps onto my methodology, which is also, there's still not that much that uses my methodology that's involved with the topic. So just trying to find that was quite hard. So when I was able to use the sort of the research tool, I could find other documents and then other research, and then was able to kind of have a look at what was their methodology, because I just couldn't find, for example, reflexive thematic analysis. There just wasn't anybody writing on this, and so it was quite helpful to be able to at least just locate those documents.
Yeah, but I would say just double, triple check.
Absolutely, yeah, understood. But the question here, if I could just ask, is then when you are using it in that way, that would be considered acceptable, I think, is what the question is, you know, as long as you're being responsible and having to double check.
So actually, I would tell you one thing, going back to that, your first point, as an editor for like journals for like the ECPR and stuff now, like I have seen a lot of people, and I know for other friends who are editors in academic journals, I have seen it quite often. People, we're receiving emails saying, you know, my paper has been cited, but that has been a hallucination. You can imagine how many emails we get. So which means that what is happening is that quite often the AI is giving you a paper that it thinks that is relevant to your research, and it might be to a certain extent, but it's using it for like a wrong reference, if that makes sense. Right? So we do receive a lot of those kind of complaints. The other thing is that, especially now, when it comes to your, if it is about your thesis or whatever, I would say you need to see what are the regulations in your like academic institute. There are, and then when it comes to specific journals, academic journals, if this is something that you want to submit, there are different policies. So there are still quite a lot that completely, they just, you know, they not allow you to use AI for anything. And when we talk anything, we mean even that. So
understood. Okay.
Yeah. There are others that are a bit more flexible, but you have to report it. And you will see that now, and I think this kind of transparency is a good thing, that more and more researchers are just saying, yeah, we have used AI for this and that. Could even be like stuff like proofreading, for example, because AI is pretty good at that as well.
Okay, thank you.
To be honest, you're more than welcome. Okay, so I'm a little bit, do we have any other questions? Okay, I will come back to that at the very end, a little bit on the ethics, but if I can just have the next slide. So what I have done basically here for you, as I said, guys, is I'm just going through like different steps of around research. So another way, and in my kind of touch a little bit on that, is you know, sometimes the AI can also, I think, kind of help you to a certain extent kind of move a little bit forward with your own kind of research questions. And what I'm saying about that is the following. So AI is not as good as we are, because I would say what it's doing is kind of replicating what is out there. So it knows the theory, it doesn't really, I don't know, let me say something like it can't be extremely kind of innovative, okay? But we have seen, and there is research about it. So basically what I mean with innovative, it cannot really generate new theories, okay? It cannot really do yet the work that we are doing as social scientists, and that's a good thing. But we know from research that if we kind of use it now in a way where you go kind of a little bit back and forth and ask questions, so if you kind of use it, I don't know, as a mean of, you know, debating with your own self and ideas, it can really kind of help you kind of progress a little bit. It's not the AI as such that is helping you do that, but it's just more of the process, okay? So it's because what is happening is like we're having someone opposite to us and we kind of discuss about our research. And when you do that, typically you develop also new ideas. That's why if I put my supervisor kind of hat on, what that means is like the more you write, the more you talk about your research. That's how you generate new ideas, and that's potentially how you generate good research. So if you start using the AI kind of in the same way, we have seen, and there's some evidence that will help you generate good ideas, or ideas, new ideas. So what I've done here is I've used that example that I'm telling you now to create a graph, okay, and to include an additional kind of dimension into my research. So if you remember, I started with this kind of gender equality, gender gap, gender equality kind of approach. And then somewhere into the process, what happened is I included here something which is called cohorts, like different generations, okay? So I have like my two countries, I have two kind of, let's say, extreme cases. One is Hungary. That was an example of a non-very egalitarian, I would say, along, you know, with other countries like Greece as well, or potentially Italy as well. And then I have another example of a country which is part of what we call more egalitarian societies, which is Sweden. And then I have lines representing the gender gap. I have men and women, and also kind of the trajectories on the basis of their generations, okay? And sometimes these ideas, they can come up by just, you know, discussing a little bit your ideas and your research with the AI. And we have seen that quite. So you think about it this way, sometimes it's good if you can just use the AI, I don't know, as a little as a diary, okay, to a certain extent. I don't know if you have ever tried that, but honestly, sometimes it's really is a very useful kind of approach. Also, it is very useful if you ever use the AI, you know, to discuss your theory, to challenge it a little bit, and you will find a lot of mistakes, and you will find a lot of refinements as well there. So this is another example of, let's say, of a graphs that you can create, and how kind of the AI help you push a little bit forward your research. Another point I would like to tell you is that something that I really like doing, which is sometimes I can visualize into my mind exactly how I want my graph to look like. And I put a lot of emphasis on graphs here, because I think, you know, graphs can very nicely represent our first argument. Okay, so we know, like even from neuroscience, that is easier for us to understand a graph than sit down and read a complex paragraph. So graphs, they're indeed like very nice to immediately like visualize your main argument, and on the basis of that to start developing, you know, especially your methodological section. So there has been cases, I'll tell you two things that I've done. The one, it is that I typed it and I described exactly what I wanted to the AI. So for example, in that I was using again an analysis of generations, like cohorts, and I knew that I wanted to see the change across the oldest cohort and the youngest cohort, and I want to connect that with lines and see the direction as well, if like gender equality was becoming more conservative, or it was becoming more progressive for different cohorts in different countries. And I had no idea about the code, but I knew how I wanted my graph to look like. So I can tell you that immediately, in that case, it was Claude, identified like the model, the type of the graph, the type of the lines, the type of the graphs. And, you know, it was very good at giving me the code. Otherwise, it would have taken me kind of ages. And I can share with you that it has been the case once where I draw, like with a pen, the graph, how I wanted it to look like. I took a photo and I put it online, and then I asked for the AI to give me the code in R, and that worked magnificently. It was really nice, and it was really good. So I think that, you know, one of the interesting things with now the AI is that, you know, we can find different ways to get what we really want, and get it kind of quite fast, which I think is the most important part. So yeah, so what I meant to say here is, like, use your fantasy of how you want things to look like. You can dictate it, you can write it, you can draw it, you can think about it, you can start asking questions to the AI and think about potential new directions to your research. But no matter what you do, and if I can have the next slide here, I think the best thing would be to always ask for the AI to give you the code. I have included it here, and you will see that typically what it's going to do is that if you give very specific prompts, let's say, it will give you the full code, from recoding your data to subsetting it, to do all the changes, the libraries, all the changes that you need, including the plot, in order to have, you know, the best final kind of outcome that you might need. And I think we can move to the next one, if that is possible. Apologies. I'm a little bit cautious of times as well, and time for discussion. Okay, so that was like the first part of potentially what can you do with the use of AI. So we covered prompts, and we have also covered, let's say, descriptive statistics like mean, median tables, and anything that has to do with the first graphs. Now, sometimes, I mean, you can also start and, have these, let's call it kind of discussions with AI when it comes to anything that have to do with your kind of main hypothesis. Okay. So let's say that if your hypothesis is that whether the paradox that we discuss about on the gender gaps for attitudes is more kind of prominent in egalitarian countries, then you should find that your two variables are kind of gender equality will be kind of positively correlate, let's say, with some macro level measures. So you can ask the AI to do like a very specific job. So for example, you can ask it to give you the code or even to construct the gender gap at the country level. But as I said, what I think is always quite important, and I feel like I need to repeat that, is that you need to know what you have to do. So for example, if you just ask AI to calculate the gender gap for you, and you have a data set that, let's say, includes multiple schools or includes multiple countries, it would not know necessarily that the best way forward is to calculate the gender gap per country or even sometimes per year. So you have to be like really on top of things. So you have to give like very specific instructions. Really, like you have, and 12 years old kind of kid actually, being your research assistant, and you're taking it by hand and giving very specific, very detailed instructions. So you can ask it to merge the two data sets. It could ask it to calculate Pearson correlation for you, and it can even like ask it to create a scatter plot. And then you will see in the next slide, please, that it can just immediately, give you the full kind of output with a graph, with a slope, with anything, okay, that you need, even the interpretation and everything. And then obviously you can kind of improve that if you want. As before, my suggestion would be, instead of asking for the output, because the AI can do that now, it can just give you immediately the output, ask for the code so you can replicate your analysis. The other reason why I'm saying that is also because in most occasions now the journals, they would ask you for the replication file. So if your paper gets accepted, they will ask you for your code. And they will also ask you to submit like your data, and then other researchers should be able to replicate your results. So that's why it's very important always to have a diary, let's say, or to have your code. Okay, so ask AI to give you a code, quite often like annotated, so you can submit it with the final version of your paper to the journals. And most journals, they do ask for that now. I mean, you might say that my data is restricted, okay, but you should give your code. Or you might say that my data, is coming from the European Social Survey. That is the site where you can go and download it. But here it is, my code to replicate my analysis. Okay. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, good. So now, like, moving to the kind of the final part, one thing that I think that I strongly believe that AI is really good, and I say that to my students as well, is quantitative methods. Okay, it's really good about it. And I think it is because it is how it has been programmed. And the other reason I think it is because, believe it or not, websites like Wikipedia has one of the best entries they have is anything that has to do with statistics, typically. So the AI will be, I guess, like any AI tool, will be really good at helping you learn and identify models for your analysis. And I think it is also a good idea to potentially have this discussion with AI of what might be kind of an appropriate method or an appropriate model or other approaches, let's say, to your research. Sometimes it might hallucinate a little bit, but there are ways to bring it kind of back to reality. So it might suggest really kind of advanced and complicated stuff just for the sake of just suggesting them. But I think if you're challenging a little bit and ask questions like, why should I do this? Why should I do that? Does it really fit with my data? That is the level of measurement of my data, whatever. Or, as you said, mentioned right now, Ryan, something like, okay, what are the researchers in this field are doing or what they are not doing? Okay, you will find the output kind of quite useful. So here, what I did is that I've been through this process with the AI tool, and it suggested that there are some specific types of analysis that allows you to understand if it is people form specific behaviors because of the period they live in, or because we see that is what we call kind of a cohort effect, which means is it because of the experiences specific generations have been through. Okay. Classic examples around that are things like, to give you an idea, is it the case that millennials are much more conservative when it comes to issues related to women compared to baby boomers, for example? So is it because they are millennials and they've been through the same kind of experiences, they grow up in the same kind of period, or is because they're just young, or is it because we go through a period of high level of unemployment? So there are specific models that help you to answer this kind of questions. And the classic one is something which is called age period cohorts regression model. So once you might potentially identify that this is a very good model, or you want to test it and see what is the result, again, the AI can definitely help you draft the model, draft the syntax, start with a minimal model, like including specific, let's say, questions, specific, variables, a minimum, let's say, example of variables into the model, write the code, test some of the assumptions of the model, help you with issues related to, for example, how I run this model while I have 24 countries. I have seen in the bibliography that they do it when they have one country or only two, but how do I do it now in my case where I have like 25 or the whole of the European Union? Obviously, my suggestion is that you have to go back and always check with the in textbooks or in publications, related publications, but the AI is typically quite good in that. But also it can help you, and I think that is quite important, give you the code that can help you extract tables and extract graphs that are coming from the models, either a more advanced stuff like age period cohort regression models, or a classic like linear regression model as well. I would say that what is always important is that there has to be elements of that model that you do own. So for example, it is important not to rely on the AI on which variables you should include into your model. Okay, in this specific case, for example, it had to be my decision as a researcher how exactly I, define generations. Generations are based on the years we were born, okay? And there is a huge kind of literature in political behavior on theory of socialization and cohort effect. So I had to make sure that I'm very familiar, right, with that. And then the AI was there just to help me overcome potential issues that I might have with the regression models, okay? So that is very, very important, because we own the theory, we own our research. It's only us that know, what we need to control for, which variables are important for our arguments, etc. So can I have the next slide, please? Right, so then you know, the AI can give you the code potentially of outputs that are like these ones. And quite often, if there is anything, you know, that is not very clear, it can also help you understand the outputs of the model. I will refrain from using AI to write results for you. And one reason has to do with your own training. Number two is that quite often it makes a lot of mistakes. Okay. And the other thing is that also, you know, it's only us that we know what is the argument that we're trying to build and how we want to present our results in a convincing way. Okay, for our reviewers. Now, can I have the next slide if it's possible? Good. So this is an example of how the code potentially will look like, and I have included it here only because I want to tell you that the code that you will typically get if you ask this kind of question is very, very explicit. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. It includes kind of everything that you need, as long as you have given like very detailed prompts. To a certain extent, it means like you have trained your model. Again, if the first few times that you might using AI to do like a bit more advanced quantitative research, make sure that you fully understand the code, because what is happening is that quite often the AI might drop a few lines there of code that can completely, you know, introduce, let's say, a lot of bias into your models. I can give you classic examples of that I've seen quite recently. Is a very specific one, but if you have used like quantitative methods before, you will feel me. So for example, with one of my students in a recent kind of research, what it did is that the AI, she had like a data set that was about 3,000 people. And then the moment she was trying to run her models, what she found is that her number of cases had dropped down to something like 500. Okay, so that means that she was losing a lot of cases. And you might think that this is not important, but this is a kind of a lot of information, basically. And that is quite important because it might lead to biased results. So what was happening is that at some point in the code that she was using, most probably it was with the use of AI had included a line that was asking to delete it. It was called like list-wise deletion. It means that it went whenever it will see a missing case, like an NA, or I don't know, or whatever, in one of your variables, it will immediately exclude, you know, the whole row, like the whole response, the responded completely. Okay. Even if it was like she was using, let's say, 6 variables, and in one variable, let's say like age, the respondent didn't want to reveal his age, it will immediately exclude that respondent from the analysis. And this is not something that we typically do in social sciences, okay? Exactly because we don't want to, we are fine if we have some missing cases in some variables, but we don't want to completely, you know, exclude respondents from our models, if that makes sense, right? So you have to be quite careful. So you have to always kind of revise the code if that is possible, because it will do that sometimes, because the AI is not trained as social scientists, but we are. Okay, so we know what is the norm in our field. Right, so may I have the next slide, please? So yeah, so that is just the rest of the code. I have just included a very, you know, detailed, the whole response basically from the AI here, so you have an idea about it, and that should be the following kind of code as well. And just to go to the more or less to the end of it, that is to be slide 15. of potential risks that you might have. So some of the things that I have experienced, okay, in the previous years, wrong syntax, okay. So if you're asking the AI to give you the code and to do the analysis for you, just make sure that you always run the code as well. Sometimes it might come up with hallucinations, like results that they don't really exist, and in order just to give you some results. Okay, so just make sure, double check the code, triple check the numbers. Sometimes, and especially when you do more of a descriptive analysis, you know that it's important to apply what we call like weights, okay, like population weights, for example, to make sure that what is in our survey accurately represents the real world. Sometimes, especially with descriptive statistics, it forgets to do that, but this is a standard approach, especially when it comes to social sciences. You might see that quite often the AI, not all of them, but some of them, might create some hallucinations when it comes to the actual results. So if you just ask it to give you the results without you rerunning the code, you might see that it omits some signs, it might change the numbers, so it might create some hallucinations. So do not fully trust, okay, the outcome that the AI is giving you. I have seen a lot of references, fabrications, okay, or other things that I have seen is that in my, some people, what they're doing is that they're asking to give the link, okay, or the DOI of the paper, but what the AI sometimes is doing is giving you the wrong links, okay, in a way to prevent of being kind of caught, to be honest. So always be careful with that. And I'm going to give you an anecdote I've seen from like students sometimes, that they have used the AI to put the bibliography into an alphabetical order, not to create reference or citations, just to sort the bibliography in alphabetical order. And while they did that, the AI kind of secretly included their fake references, if that makes sense. So be very, very careful with all of these things. Also, the other thing that I have seen, and I've seen it quite often, is what I discussed earlier, that sometimes, especially when you ask it to summarize papers, okay, or to find papers, or, you know, give you a bit of an outline related to your theory, they might be using some papers to kind of substitute, let's say, yeah, they might use them basically on as references into things that are quite similar to what the authors are saying, but not exactly the same. Okay. So because you cannot really find evidence to support your claim, you might find like the closest match, but it's not an appropriate references. So always check about it. And can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. So always do what they call like sanity checks, rerun everything from scratch, ask for the code, not to do the analysis, rerun the code. If you're using it for summaries and stuff, and I do understand how helpful it is, go back and read always the full paper. The AI can only read abstracts, okay, or at least the classic ones can do that. It's good if you want to sometimes, you know, keep an AI folder a little bit like a diary, or if you have the paid version, then you can see like an outline, you can see your diary of how you have used it and to do what exactly. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, and if you go to the final slide, please, and I think that's what I have there. No, maybe to the next one. Yeah. Is no, yeah. is exactly that. These are things that you should be quite careful, because it's important to remember that you are the author and the AI is the tool. I think transparency is quite important. The position of most academic journals now has changed, and most of them, they went from complete no to the use of AI to just report it. Okay, so say exactly what you did with the use of AI, so just acknowledge it, basically. But AI obviously cannot be listed there as an author. And to be fair is, yeah, I think we should be reporting it when you use me. There's nothing wrong with it, right? As long as we remain the main authors and the AI is there just to act as an assistant, as a tool, okay, that helps you with your research. So you will see that most probably they're gonna use you for a full for a full disclosure, like which model you use, which version, exactly for what. It could be with coding, it could be with editing, it could be for like proofreading, but they ask you about it. Now, I know that you might be thinking, okay, why do I need to do that? But I think, you know, trust, it is important, like it's important to be open and transparent about it, and you will see that now there's nothing wrong about it. You're not going to have any kind of implications if you're honest, basically. And you will see more and more now, in more and more papers coming out, the authors will say things like, we've used it, you know, for debugging our code, we used it for the development of grants, we used it to check like for typos, etc. And that is, for most academic journals, that also are quite fine. So you do not supposed to cite, or you don't have to cite, unless you're working with the AI as such, necessarily, you know, cite the AI. But also, what I would say to do is that you have to be cautious in general what you paste into the AI models. And I would say, do not include, if you have like a paper or anything you need, do not include unpublished manuscripts, do not share your work, okay, with the AI, do not share confidential data with the AI. These are public models, okay? You never know what is going to happen, and there's a lot of literature about it those days. Do not just paste, you know, reviewers' comments and everything. But I think it is very important to protect, okay, your own work. You don't want other people to get it because, you know, you just post it online into the AI. And I would say, if you can, it's quite important to keep like a diary, save your prompts, your output, okay? Keep that as part of your replication material. That is quite important. Thank you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.